So yes, thank you everyone who's joined our market briefing this morning. Yeah, a nice early one. So thank you very much for starting your day with an MGAA even market briefing. So before I hand over to our presenters, I'll just do a quick few bits of housekeeping. So the session's at a different time, but yeah, same do's and don'ts that I do usually at our lunchtime market briefing. So could kindly ask just to help us with the technology if you could keep microphones and cameras off, just so that we can stay with you for the duration and we don't have any technical hiccups. That would be appreciated. In terms of questions, encouraging you, yes, please, lots of questions. I do believe that there may be a little bit of questions to you in the presentation, but I won't spoil the surprise on that one. But yeah, please pop those in the chat, and yeah, we'll cover them off at the end, or if there is a convenient moment and relevant to what's being covered, I think the presenters may pick them up as we go through. But there's definitely time allocated at the end for questions. So. Also, sort of nearly forgot, just to let you know, I know Zoom lets you know, but just to remind you that the session is being recorded. But the good news about that is that we'll send you a link to the recording and a copy of the slides. So if you do want to review anything or forward it on to a colleague to have a look at, you are free to do so. So that leaves me to introduce our presenters today. So pleased to have Chromatic Brands with us. And we have Simon, Alec, and Anthony. I apologise. Anthony has a little bit of a problem with his camera, but I can assure you it is him that you will hear speaking. So I will hand over now to our presenters, who will do a far better job at introducing themselves, their company, and their presentation today. So yes, over to you. I believe, is it Simon?
Thanks, Alison. I appreciate it. I almost think that was quite formal. I almost think we should have a fire drill as well, just just in case. So, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. It's a dreek day out there. I think there's potentially snow coming down. So we will try and introduce some warmth into your lives for the next 45 minutes. If I start to share. We have myself, I'm the founder of Chromatic, Alec, who is
Everybody,
partner
morning.
and heads up our strategy, and Anthony, who's hiding because his camera is broke, and he runs our growth. And if anybody on the line is responsible for auto insurance, Anthony's daughter had a prang this morning, so you might want to get it. So can everyone see this slide?
I
Yes.
can.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent. So what we're going to do with you this morning is talk to you about how to use brand to help you grow and to help to create enduring value. There are two basic parts to this presentation. The first half, Alec will take you through what a brand is and why it is important. And the second half of the deck that we're going to take you through, myself, Alec, and Ant will share sections to talk about strategy, to talk about identity, and to talk about experience. And that isn't working. So the problem that we're going to address this morning is also the way that we approach brands and branding. And if you think of those three columns there, what you have is you have brand strategy on the left, what you stand for. You have identity in the middle, how you stand out, and you have activations and marketing on the right, which is where you show up. And the issue that we're going to try and help you to think through is how to create a brand that is meaningfully differentiated in a sector where everybody is sort of doing the same thing. And I'm sure that's not true of anyone on this call. But when we look at MGAs and when we look at insurance sector broadly, what we see is most people are saying the same things about themselves. So they talk about being dynamic and agile and expert. And in fact, we went to an incubator a couple of weeks ago where all 15 of the finalists talked about being AI led. Everybody is showing up and sorry, everyone's identity is broadly similar. And we understand the reasons for that. There is a balance between fitting in and standing out, and that's a difficult one to strike. And then communications tend to be similar in a similar place and aren't disruptive enough to get you noticed. So what we're going to do today is talk about these individual parts of a brand, how to align them. And as I said, Alec will take the strategy, which is about how you stand, what you stand for. I will take the identity, and will take the experience and how you stand out. And then very briefly about us, for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at our website, now this will take 2 seconds. We are a strategy-led identity and branding consultancy that works a lot in your sector. So we have some fairly big and some smaller MGA clients, and so we understand the vernacular and we understand the issues. And for those who hopefully are inspired after this to go off and have a conversation with the CEO and a CFO, it's really important to think of what we do as an investment. So brand is an investment, and if you do it well and if you do it consistently and you commit to it, it will pay back in spades. And I don't know how many of you have heard of velocity risk, which is the bottom of this slide, but velocity risk is a cat risk MGA that's sold to Ryan this year for over 500 million. And the ex-bosses of Velocity Risk phoned me yesterday, and after a 5-minute conversation, they said, "Can you do it again? Can you do the same thing you did for them for our new company?" So it does pay, and it's worth thinking about that as an investment as we go forward. So I'm going to hand over to Alec, and Alec is going to take you through just a little bit of a background as to what a brand is and how they're built. And then he will take you through strategy, and what we'll give you are some really useful tools to take away that you can use yourself on strategy. But there will also be a quiz in each section, and we'd like your answers, please. So over to you, Alec.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. As Simon said, we'll try and keep this kind of light and warm, but there are some important things we need to try and land. We rather imagine a lot of you in your space need to explain, what branding is for your colleagues. Explain why, as Simon said, it's an important investment that delivers, real value for the business. So we think that, hoping to give you some simple language and some simple constructs that you can use to build arguments internally and make sure that everybody can understand the value of the work. So, Si, if you crack on, I do want to start with a quick pop quiz, as to help us understand when we talk about brands. Would anyone in the chat feel brave enough to say, thinking here about brand from a brand mark, but from a trademark perspective, did anyone like to speculate or guess what the first brand mark registered in the UK was? I'm going to give you 15 seconds for any chat, and then I'm going to show you the answer if nobody wants to give it a go. Anybody? The first registered trademark. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maga. Anyone else like to have a wild guess? Oh, okay. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Charlotte. Ooh, M&S. Okay, yeah, all good. All good guesses. John Lewis. Oh, might come to John Lewis later, actually. But thank you. Woolworths. Yes, gone but not forgotten. The answer. Thanks, Si. You've just given it away.
Sorry.
You can't take it back. No, don't worry. Bass. So Bass were first in the queue on the 1st of January 1876 at the Patent Office to register that famous red triangle as a brand mark. Interestingly, you might spot it, for those of you with better eyes than me, on the bar there in Manet's painting of Follette de Bergère. It was during the time of the Franco-Prussian War. So the French destroyed all of the German beer that they've been drinking to date, replacing it with the newly branded Bass beer. So Bass was the first registered trademark, but brands go back way before that. So brand is not a new construct at all. Sticking with the subject of beer, the earliest brand I could find, or there may be others, is actually Stella Artois, which has been going for 700 years, which seems extraordinary. The important thing when we think about brands is, you know, of course it's more than a logo, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But let's be honest. When people do first think the word brand, they do think logo, they do think mark, and it's important to get that right. There's real property to be built in there. But what's happened over the years, and I think this is crucial for yourselves, as Simon was indicating, a lot of the conversation about MGA brands and other brands within the sector, people talk about themselves. They talk about we're dynamic. We talk about we're expert. We talk about we're AI enabled. The question is, what does it mean for other people? Now, brands, particularly in the consumer space, have kind of switched that round. You know, it used to be just about a brand was a mark of quality, a mark of authenticity. I made this here. This is us. But increasingly and importantly, it's actually talking about your customer. What do they think? What do they value? What benefits do they get? So I would encourage you, next slide, if I may, to really think around pivoting that. Let's not only think about what we do, how we make it, what our product is, what our features are. Force yourself to think it from a customer's or client's or partner's perspective. What does it mean for them? What does it mean? What value is it delivering at a rational level, but also at an emotional level? Because crucially, again, next slide, if I may. Um, you know, it's not just a logo, and I think for me the big the simplest answers when people say, "Well, brand is a brand is a name, brand is an outcome." Your brand is an outcome of what you do, what you say, how you communicate, what content you provide, how you serve people. It's owned by your customers. It's a concept that lives in their mind of what they think and what they feel about your business. So really important not to only obsess upon defining what we do and who we are, but really, really make sure that you're bringing it alive to understand this is about making sure that deliberately we want people to think and feel about us this way. So how you communicate, how you engage, what you offer is all around deciding how you want people to think and feel in order to do business with your company, in order to prefer you, in order to drive up your market share. Because that's where that concept, that construct of something very, very indefinable about thoughts and feelings and ideas, so next slide, please, becomes very tangible as a business asset. You know, this is about genuine value within an organization. You know, it's absolutely the engine of customer preference. People cannot choose to work with your organization unless they feel that you're offering something better value, better quality, better performance. Yeah, that becomes an enormous intangible value within a business. You know, when you look at the FTSE 100, something like 70% of value is intangible value, of which IP branding is a crucial part of that. Yeah, it's massively vital. Sorry, back a slide. In terms of raising the value of the business, we mentioned the examples of Velocity and other clients that we've worked on. Yeah, that's because brand equates to future earnings potential. You know, an organization which has a powerful brand, which draws customers, which draws colleagues, which is perceived as being stronger, better, different, is then a great investment because you know it will grow faster and better than less well-branded organizations. And of course, we focus on the customer, you know, sales being the engine that drives all of us, but also from a colleague perspective, a brand becomes a magnet. A brand becomes a strong brand is an organization that people want to buy into, want to belong to, and want to work within. So, yeah, I want to just leave you with a couple of thoughts. You know, yes, brand is conceptual. Of course it is. It's a bundle of ideas, a bundle of associations. It's owned by a customer. It's not a logo, but boy, it has business value. It translates into something which is absolutely central to the value of the organization. And the other point to make, and come on now to some tools and processes. Yeah, let's not forget the emotional dimension. We'll pick up on this more when we talk about how to stand out and where to stand up and how to actually engage in conversations and trigger emotions that really motivate people. You know, this is about emotions. This is about people. Of course, we're dealing with serious business organizations that do serious things. Insurance, is a category risk, and others, a very, very serious-minded operation. But you're talking about people. You're talking about making connections with people, building a sense of advocacy, building a sense of emotional relationship. And of course, Manveen mentioned John Lewis is a possible first brand. I would speculate that was probably invented in about the 1930s, the JLP, and of course they've evolved the brand since then. But interestingly, that's an organization that has absolutely traded upon that emotional appeal. I'm going to pause for a second. I've just whizzed through, kind of just clarifying when we talk about brand. Yes, it's the logo, but it's more than the logo. It's a construct. It's owned by your customers, and it has that tremendous business value. I'm going to share some very practical tools and approaches to think about what your brand stands for in a second. I'm just going to pause for a moment. Any questions that you might want to lodge for later, and we'll either pick up now or later. I'll just pause for a moment or two if anyone wants to ping anything in the chat. Well, I'll keep going, but do feel, please, what we'll be doing is keeping an eye on the chat. So if anyone has any questions or they think we've gone too quickly or want to kind of correct us, that would be great. So let's crack on with the next section. So as we talked about, and actually next slide, Si. Um, this might sound simple, and that is the beauty of it. There's an awful lot of BS in the world of branding and marketing. I think we all know that. A lot of long words used because it makes people sound clever. Actually, if we can make things simple, make things memorable, make things human, you really half the job is done. And it's taken us a very long time because you can see that Simon and I both in the prime of our lives, young men at the beginning of our career journeys, to realize how simple brand strategy is and how simple it can be. It's no more complex than working out what you stand for and making sure that's something that resonates and that matters to people on an emotional level. Call that value proposition if you like. Working out how you can stand out, making sure you have a genuinely distinctive identity, you're delivering genuinely distinctive experiences, and then deciding where and how to stand up, to be judicious in the way that you activate, the way that you engage, the kind of conversations you want to build. So that's why we structure this conversation this morning about what do you stand for, how can you stand out, where should you stand up? Honestly, folks, it really is. I think it really is as simple as that, and I hope that would be useful to you as a sort of way of communicating to folk outside of the marketing community what this kind of mystery of brand is, without resorting to the kind of BS that a lot of people engage in. So let's start with thinking about stand for. And again, I wanted a little game. Thank you for those of you who played the game a few minutes ago in terms of the oldest brand mark. I'm going to show you four brands for names and logos and four statements for qualities. And I'd like somebody to tell me, either in chat or even jump in on the mic, which of these statements they associate with which of these brands. So, Si, if you don't mind clicking on. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to say, if I forced you to link one of those statements, one of those attributes with one of those brands, which would you do? What would, if I've said you can only match one characteristic to one mark? Anyone want to dive in on the chat or even on the mic? Don't be shy. Oh, hello. Thank you very much, Lauren. Natalie, hello. I want you to try and do all of them if you can. Yeah, Louisa says Amazon makes things simple. Kerry says Apple is relentlessly stylish. Lauren says Apple is relentlessly stylish. Natalie says Apple is the industry standard. uh, Kerry says that breadth of scope is Microsoft. Oh, thank you very much, Manveen's gone for the whole hog. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple, ABCD. Thank you. Lauren says Google is breadth of scope. No, okay, lovely, lovely. Okay, I'm gonna reveal the answers which I thought you had, which I thought you'd get to. Thank you very much. Um, so we thought you'd say, and some of you said this, but I won't lie and say that everybody was had exactly the same answer. It would be very peculiar if you did. That, all of these brands, to my mind, represent all of those qualities. They're all stylish. They're all make things simple for you. They all have a breadth of scope. They all become the standard and indispensable. But I think, and I think many of you probably felt the same thing, that if you're forced into it, you're saying, yeah, do you know what? Amazon's the one that's really all about simplicity and making the customer journey super simple. Apple's bloody stylish, and fundamentally, that's one of the reasons we chose Apple over Android or Apple over Microsoft. Google's got this extraordinary breadth of scope. Is there anything they can't do, from a university to a work to a search function to a Word document? And then Microsoft, for good or ill, has become this industry standard that the world runs on. But extraordinarily enough, to my mind, all of those qualities are true, but through experience, through advertising, through promotion, through usage, certain qualities have come out on top. Now, fundamentally, so let's go to the next slide, because I want to just land a kind of simple point. This is all about that game, that crucial balance between relevance and differentiation. Yeah, making sure that you stand for the things that you need to stand for to build connections with your customer, and making sure that you stand out from competitors. You've got some qualities, you've got some attributes, you've got some associations that you perceive to own. Now, really importantly, relevance in any given market. Relevance equates to market share, and differentiation, distinctiveness equates to premium pricing or superior choice. So you need to be relevant to be in the game, but you need to be different to win the game. And that's that crucial aspect. Don't just talk about being dynamic, being agile, being expert, being AI driven. Talk about what makes you different and express it in a way that means something to your customers. Isn't just an articulation of your organization. So I'm going to crack on, and I want to talk about some really important tools, because saying, "Oh, be different," yeah, not easy, but can be done, and actually can be done again. I think using some very simple tools, which I encourage you to go away and play with. But happy, of course, for us, we'd be more than happy to help you with this. But let's see whether whether these tools stand up on their own. One is about mapping the market. Two is about making sure you really think where your distinctive qualities are. And three is about making sure you really resonate with customers and find that emotional connection. So if I carry on, mapping the market. Mapping might sound like a very analytical tool, indeed it is, but I think it's also based upon a creative leap. Really thinking hard about where is the marketplace? How is the marketplace distinctive? How do we make sure that we understand where we play in the corner of the market, where we operate, which pulls us apart from our competitors? Some might be broad players, some might be offering niche solutions, some might be leaning in towards innovation and change, others leaning towards assurity and comfort. We think, and go on to the next slide, Si, and some of you may have read the white paper that we wrote a couple of weeks ago. That when we look at your particular marketplace, the way we read it, and it's just a speculative read based upon working for a few clients, but also the way we these are not clients of ours, but we took the liberty of positioning them on a market map. We think that some MGAs are much more about innovation, much more about change, much more about transformation. Some are much more about reassurance, about making sure that you're trusted, that you're delivering. Some seem to talk about taking cost out, streamlining, making things simpler, making things quicker, and some much more about customization, about service, about that white glove. So the way that we looked at it, so we think there's kind of four broad areas here. Some organizations are all about efficiency champions. We're going to take cost out, we're going to get it done. Some much more about guiding you towards the future, innovation concierge. Some of them much more about customer service, about intimacy, personal gurus. And some are out there disrupting, being the code breakers. I would encourage you, in the spirit of thinking we've got to be relevant, but we've also got to be different. Have a think about, where do you sit on that map, or would you like to challenge the axes? How do you make sure that you've got something that you understand where you sit in relation to other people, and how do you lean in towards equality, which is going to allow you to be somewhat distinctive? Second tool. So tool one is mapping. Second tool is about the quest for best. What is it that makes us distinctive? What is it that we do which is genuinely ownable? Something that we're first at, we're the best at, we're the only provider at. And again, I would recommend doing this with colleagues. It's a fantastic workshop tool to sit through and say, what is it we can really bring to the market, which is something of distinctive value? Is it about our product and what we actually offer? Is it about our processes? Is it about the way we treat people? Is it about our qualities as individuals? Is it about something broader, a sense of purpose, a sense of lasting impact? Is it about the reputation and the relationships we have? Is it something else? Work through those qualities, work through those columns, and think about, where could our points of difference be? And then be really brutal with yourself to say, knock out the hygiene factors. We're not interested in majoring upon the things that make us relevant. Let's find those things potentially that can make us distinctive and different. Let's really understand and be very disciplined about where that can be. And if there aren't any to hand, we might need to create some. We might need to really think about how we can add something truly distinctive in the mix. Third tool, if everyone's still scribbling down like lunatics, think, as we said before, think John Lewis, think from a customer's perspective, think about a human connection. What is it, the real value at an individual level that you're providing for people? Are you making their lives easier? Are you helping them get their job done quicker? Are you helping them take control and feel calm and feel in charge? Are you helping them change and evolve as individuals as well as organizations? Now, they may not tell you what they need. We might need to discover a latent need rather than that overt need. But decide, how high up that emotional ladder do I want to play? From a sort of Maslowian perspective, quite basic, simple needs to something much more individuated and much more intense and emotive. Because the closer you can get to those high level, strong relationship needs, the better connection you have with your colleagues, with your customers. And then finally, last tool, and then I'm going to hand over to Simon. You'll be pleased to know. Pull that together. Okay, so we've done some thinking about the market and about the characteristics of our marketplace. We've done some thinking about customer needs, customer emotions, customer demands, and we've done some thinking about what we can deliver only, what our qualities are. Put that together in a really simple sentence, and we've done this at oodles of times, and it's a great workshopping tool with colleagues. It can be done quite quickly as a way of establishing some common consensus. Try and sit down and write what we would call a statement of relevant differentiation. What do we stand for? Here's our marketplace. It's characterized by X. Customers demand A, B, and C. Only we can deliver X, Y, Z, what has the benefit of. You'll find yourself getting to a really strong, really good place quite quickly, provided you take that discipline of really thinking about the mapping the market, thinking about what your particular qualities are, and make sure you address it from a customer's lens and think about that emotional value that you're delivering. So three tools to help you think about, to determine that crucial first block of what do we stand for as a business. I'll pass over to Si, but click on the slide, and then anyone, again, any questions, any comments, you could lodge it now before Simon talks about standing out, about identity, and about those building blocks of from a visual perspective. Anybody?
I think you've done a brilliant job, Alec, and it's very clear and everyone knows exactly what they're going to be doing. So I will be doing a quiz, but Alec, can I ask a favor? I can't see the chat because I'm sharing, so you might have to have a look and see if there's any
Will do.
answers.
I've got it open, yeah.
So thank you for that, brilliant explanation of strategy, and hopefully you now have the tools to go away and think about your businesses and to simplify what we would call the brand strategy. What's really important, if you think of those three dots, the three circles that Alex showed before, is that now that you have your strategy, that informs your brand expression. Your brand expression, your identity, your logos, your colors aren't different. They take their cue from your strategy. So if you know how you're positioned, if you know what your proposition is and your personality, that will give you a very, very clear steer as to how to design your identity. So I'll start off with a quiz, and Alec will tell me if you've any answers. We reckon you should be able to get at least 5 or 6 of these. So from the logos, can you name the company? And we've used tech firms as a sort of metaphor throughout this deck, but obviously this would be the same for insurance firms, the same for firms in any other sector. So there's 8 logos there. Probably between them, they account for about 90% of the value of the US stock market. So can you name them all? Or at least 4 or 5? Any answers?
None forthcoming so far. Don't be shy. Oh, thank you. Yeah, lovely. So we got Microsoft, Spotify, Microsoft, Meta, Spotify, Instagram. Thank you, Ashley. Lauren, Spotify. Oh, Charlotte, Windows, Infinity, NVIDIA, Spotify, Salesforce, question, Highway, question. Nice one, Charlotte. Thank you.
Do we have them all? I'm impressed that you got NVIDIA. Lots of people don't get that one.
She's got Instagram, Andy, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so no, Charlotte's on the money so far with is actually Meta. The infinity symbol is Meta, I think.
Yes, it is.
But in otherwise, extremely good.
So Microsoft, Meta, NVIDIA, Spotify, and then bottom column, Salesforce, huge company, Square, the payments app, Huawei, the Chinese tech firm, and Accenture. So what we'll do, and thank you for your answers. Well done for those who got them all right. I think NVIDIA and Accenture normally trip people up. So as Alex said, your brand isn't your logo. And so, but what I want to do is just take you through a few ways to think about your brand, and logo is one of them. Identities are made up of lots and lots of interacting different elements. So if you think about logos and colors and typefaces and tone of voice and sound and animation style and imagery and all of those sorts of things, we could be here all day going through those. So what I wanted to do is just talk about logo and visual language first. And as Alex said about brands used to be just a stamp of ownership. We made this comes from us. And a logo and a visual identity still does that. But more importantly, what they do is that they trigger associations. So if you look at the image of Che Guevara, which has, been around from the 60s, and you still see people wearing T-shirts of it, people whose parents probably weren't even born when he was around. The image of him, the way it's presented, the colors that always surround it, the red for communism and all of those things, they give you lots and lots of thoughts about Cuba and about Kennedy and about revolutionaries and about socialism and all sorts of things just from that simple image. And that's what we're trying to do when we create an identity. So based on the strategy that you've hopefully established with Alex Tools, what we can then do is start to design, start to create logos, typefaces, choose colors, choose ways of expressing ourselves that are appropriate to our brand and create that distinctiveness. And just in terms of simple tools that you can use and take away, this is one that it's astonishing how effective it is whenever we speak with our clients, because as Alex said, you have this balance between belonging, between, you know, looking like you belong in the tech sector and looking like you belong in the insurance sector, but also having the courage to be distinctive and stand out. And I know that if we did this map for insurance, everybody would be blue in the bottom corner, and there would be one or two standing out, and you know, it would be those companies like Beasley who stand out, who have had the courage to not be blue, to or maybe Aviva that is yellow, to not join the club, but actually stand out and stand for something that it really means something. So this is a good tool, you know, to take away and map yourself against, and map your immediate competitors, map the sector against this. And you know, if you are in that bottom corner, and the same applies for imagery and type and lots of other things, maybe it's time to think of something else. But as I said, you know, visual language is the combination of lots and lots and lots of things. And you know, just looking at style of imagery and colors and the way we send messages through pictures. And there's lots of research to suggest that actually people get their feelings about brands from pictures more than they do words, because you know, we live in a smartphone world. We're looking at TikTok and Instagram. Pictures and moving images mean an awful lot in you know, in today's world. And so sending the right messages through the pictures we use, through the animations, through the way our brands move is very important. And on the left there, you see a typical example of probably 99% of the way tech firms communicate. And as Alex said, you know, most of them talk about themselves. So they're talking about their own people in their own offices and their own processes, not necessarily their clients. And they're using the same colors and the same imagery, and they're sending the same pictorial messages as everybody else. But on the right is a technology brand that we made for an American technology firm that works in the defense space. And what you have here is a willingness and a courage by this organization to communicate in a different way. So we use these clouds as a metaphor for the changing nature of data, and these are very successful. We use black and white imagery to talk about clients and to talk about their clients' worlds and their clients' products. We used a really distinctive color palette that came from those clouds and is warm and red, as opposed to the coldness of the blacks and blues of the you know, the tech and the defense world. And then we made sure that everything moved in a distinctive way. We made sure that animation had a feel, that all of their screen interactions, you know, worked in terms of the way you press them, in terms of the way motion was triggered, so that you leave the brand with a very distinct feel, and it's all cohesive, it's all aligned, everything works together, from the typefaces to the colors to the imagery. All of these things, sounds even, all of these things complement one another and work in harmony together to create a single understanding of the personality of the business. We don't have to use lots of words to tell you what kind of business it is. You get a feel from it. And that's part of the job of identity. And if we think about something maybe more familiar before I go on to Ant, you know, think about Google. You know, there is always a temptation, I think, with businesses to think we're very complicated, we can't simplify. Google is one of the top 2 or 3 largest firms in the world by, you know, by value and by reach. And yet everything that they do is really, really simple. We can instantly identify those communications by the combination of those 4 colors. And you know, often the test of a great identity is if you stick your thumb over the logo, can you still tell who it is? And you can even do that on Google's search interface, which has nothing else but a search bar. You can do that with their spaces, their typefaces, friendly and distinctive. All of these things match up to create something that is an expression of your strategy, an expression of their strategy, but is also distinctive. And so before we move on to Ant and where you stand out, have or where you stand up, sorry, have a it's worth looking at that color wheel, but also looking at your imagery, looking at your website, the way it's structured, looking at the way things move, looking at your other things like advertising and trade show that Ant will talk about, to think about, are they really distinctive? Will they stand out? Can I recognize them if I put my hand over the logo? And if not, then maybe now is an opportunity to start rethinking about those, because we know that the market is softening. We know that the MGA market is growing hand over fist. Competition is going to get fiercer. And so being able to stand out when other people are selling the same products and the same lines as you is going to be more and more important. Any questions for that before I hand over to Ant? You're either all terrified or this makes complete sense and you're going to go away and do it to your own brands. Nothing?
Let's assume that because we've got 18 minutes to go. So
Okay. So over to you, Ant.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everyone. So now you know what stand for, the brand strategy Alec talked through, and how to stand out from competitors in the identity Simon just explained. This last part, stand up, is short for stand up and be counted. And as Alex said, it's about choosing judiciously where to stand up in ways that are authentic to that strategy and that build emotional connection with people in order to deliver enduring value. Next slide, Si. And just to be clear, we're purposefully avoiding talking about short-term tactical campaigns and performance marketing, measures like click-through rates, conversions, etc. Today, we're talking about how we can build brand equity over time, measured by things like increased pricing power, customer lifetime value, and market differentiation. Of course, we need both the green line and the red line there, but today we're just focused on the red. Let's move on to a question. I'm going to make this a rhetorical question in the interest of time. So, what's the most important insurance event? And I'm sure we can actually reveal. If you go on to the next slide, I'm sure you're familiar and you've been to many of these. And it's a bit of an ambiguous question, because if we're measuring importance by the most attended, then it's RIMS. There's 10,000 participants. It's arguably the most important international event. But it really depends on your priorities. If the goal is to meet large corporate clients, the buyers, then AMIC, which I got confused for Keir Starmer, which was interesting. If it's to access a network of thousands of UK brokers, then BIBA. I'm sure our colleagues Alison and Manveen would agree, if your strategy is to meet specialist MGA market participants, then the MGA conference is one for you. So it's ambiguous, and the answer to it depends on your business focus, the offer, location, the customers, and your relationship goals with those customers. The point being that with finite marketing resources and budgets where you have to do more with the same, sometimes less, it's important to show up in the places that are going to have the biggest positive impact on the metrics that matter most for your business. You know, and effectively your brand needs to act as a teammate in those moments. It needs to work hard for you when budgets and resources are so tight. Next slide, please, Si. And how brands stand up and show up needs to be carefully considered at every touch point. What we see here is essentially an abstracted sales funnel. So moving clockwise, top right there, from awareness and discovery through stages of purchase and ongoing relationship. But again, this is a construct. It's the reality to customers, and including B2B customers, is that there's no funnel. They don't move through a funnel. The path from awareness to purchase to them can be non-linear, sometimes immediate. Of course, different channels have different attributes and measures of success. Social media is great for awareness and creating conversation, measured by followers, impressions, engagement. Websites are great for consideration. They're often the source of inbound leads. And events that we're going to show you a few examples of in a second, they're great for building reputation. They're the confluence of marketing and business development measured by lead generation. And so on. But each of these interactions across channels, they contribute to the overall customer experience people have of the brand. And in order to build long-term brand value, this customer experience needs to be intentionally designed. It just doesn't happen. And next slide. And the key to designing a customer experience that builds value is to keep these two things front and center. Authenticity, the connection to the brand strategy and proposition, and connection, going beyond product and services. Put simply, the more people feel, the more they buy. And that definitely includes B2B audiences as well. If a brand resonates with people, it's more memorable. It's more effective of building those positive associations, which results in a decrease in price sensitivity and higher lifetime customer value. There are many studies that evidence this. Next slide, please, Si. Now, we all go to events, and we see many businesses that have invested tens of thousands of pounds on their stand and related comms, yet they struggle to tell a distinct and memorable, cohesive story. In insurance especially, I think it's fair to say that companies tend to lean towards caution and conformity, which could be an opportunity in and of itself. And whilst this image here is a bit of fun, yesterday we asked Perplexity AI, I think it was, to generate an image of the type of generic insurance stand that we should all avoid. Essentially many take a poor facsimile of their reception area and sort of port it to an event space. And we've all seen experiences like this, and they sort of blend into a sea of sameness. Next slide, please, sir. By contrast, here's an event experience we designed for Liberty. And actually, Simon is the person that drove this concept. I was wondering if you can maybe summarize the context and bearing in mind what we were just talking about, the authenticity. Why was this experience authentic to the Liberty brand, and how did it connect emotionally with people?
So we've been working with Liberty Mutual since 2017, I think, isn't it, Alec? And one of the things they ask us to do every year is design their Air Mix show, and we're starting again next week. And because there are mutual conversations and relationships and long-term relationships are very important to them, but they've also been growing, and they want to project their size and show that they're heading towards the sort of the Premier League and the top tier of underwriters. And so they give us license when we design their stand to be as creative as possible. They want to stand out. They want to generate those conversations by creating a stand that is a magnet for people to come and start those conversations. And so what we do is we use a combination of the theme of the show each year and the location to create something that is fun, that is engaging, that will act as a magnet to the stand. And this one was in Manchester a couple of years ago, and because it was in Manchester, we decided to create a record store. So we created a space where people could still meet. So it was like a recording studio, and there was a private space to meet. But we also had DJ lessons for people who wanted to turn up. We had a clubbing hour at the end of each evening that had free drinks. And we communicated the lines of business by creating pastiches of all of the most famous record covers in the world. And actually, those record covers were available for people to take, and we had to do an emergency print run after the first night because they'd all been stolen. But what was interesting was that as we went round Airmic, we could see hundreds of people carrying around these record covers, which effectively act as free advertising for Liberty. And the proof of the success is that the Liberty stand over the last 5 years has either won or come second in Best in Show every year, because it's become really, really important to them. And people talk about, we know their competitors start to talk about what Liberty are going to do before they even get to the show.
Lads, 9 minute warning, so we need to be
Okay.
some space for questions. Yeah.
So,
Okay, well,
Ant,
yeah, this will be really quick. I mean, the point to make here is that some brands leverage attributes embodied by other brands. Think Rugby and Howden. Rugby is globally associated with the attributes written there, and aligning with those values humanizes the Howden brand. It also attracts a high value audience of potential clients, mostly wearing brown brogues and chinos, it must be said, that Howden can connect with in an environment that they appreciate. And it also gives them a content and marketing narrative they can use to talk about their insurance solutions in a more compelling and relatable way. And it has to be said that whilst sponsoring sport is not the most original idea, in Howden's case, it's a good values and audience fit. They do a good job of executing the brand overall, even beyond sort of Lions sponsorship. It feels, it's not a client, by the way, but it, to us from an outside in point of view, it feels bold and distinctive. It does a decent job of communicating its entrepreneurial culture, global scale, and we get the impression it's a client experience that's perceived to be more partnership orientated, more innovative, potentially than that of traditional broking giants. They clearly have a one brand strategy. They've had a lot of acquisitions over the years, but there's a deliberate move to rebrand all those acquired firms under a single Howden brand, signaling unified global strength. And I think the success seems to lie between what we were talking about earlier, a direct link between the rhetoric and action, between what they stand for and how they stand up. So they don't just say they're entrepreneurial, they literally make their employees owners. They don't just say they're innovative, they build and showcase a dedicated analytics division. So their positioning in the way that what they stand for, their identity, and the way they stand up, it feels credible, it feels defensible in the market, allowing them to compete on longer term branding attributes of things like culture and the overall client experience, rather than just on product features and price alone, which we all know is a race to the bottom.
okay. So we've got 6 minutes, and you know, as we have said in our various different sections, and as Alec, you know, articulated eloquently earlier, we actually think brand can be simplified into these sort of 3 pillars. And if you can address those 3 pillars and align them successfully, then you're on the way to success. So we have 5 minutes. I'll stop sharing. And I wonder, does anyone have any questions? Would you like to put anything in the chat? Any questions about any of those particular sections, or maybe somebody would like to go back to some of those quizzes because they've thought of the answer? Did it all make sense? I hope that what we said and the way that we've simplified the process and given you some tools to use was practical and made sense to you. No questions, and I can see the chat now.
Oh, hang on, no. So Claudia says that was great. Thank you, Claudia.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. Appreciate it. What's the worst first step? Right, okay. Alec, do you want to take that one?
Oh, crikey, I'm just trying to think of the answer.
I think starting with assumptions, I would say. I think a lot of a lot of the clients we have think they already understand the market and think they already understand themselves. And so the first point we always try to make is, as much as you can, go out and ask other people what they think of you.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think the worst thing to do is just follow the lead of the chief executive or chairman, who whatever he, and it probably is he, thinks. Start from talking to your real for customers and colleagues, not just immediately from the top, but you've absolutely need the buy-in from the top to make any kind of progress of the sort of disciplines that we're talking about.
And
I think, Simon, the worst first step is not having clarity of the business goals.
Yeah.
That brand is in service of supporting those business goals. So it's the lens through which we're judging decisions as we build the brand and execute it. So it's having that clarity, I think.
Yeah, and it's a great point. Too many organizations and lots of organizations we actually work with, their starting point is that brand is decoration. It's the coloring in and it's the making things fancy, and it doesn't really matter. And our technology and our people are what matters. So making sure, as Ant said, that the work that you do with the brand and marketing is directly connected to goals and is measurable, that you have good measures for it, so that you can go back to the CFO and the CEO at the end of the year and say, look, what we did work, that investment has got a return. Can I have some more, please? Anything else? Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Charlotte. You'll be going back to the recording, Charlotte. Good.
Alison, anything from your side?
No, I just popped on because we've made the best use of the time, because we've got 2 minutes. And yeah, so thank you for the answer to the question. It was almost like sometimes you ask what's the one big thing you can do, and I just thought maybe it's an interesting way to look at it, is what's the one thing you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you very much for your answers to that question. And yeah, thank you ever so much for the presentation. Lots of great positive feedback there. And yeah, I will get working on the recording and get that shared with everyone so that they can review it, or give a colleague a nudge to have a look at it as well. So yeah, thank you ever so much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us. Our slightly earlier time, our new concept of a breakfast and learn rather than a lunch and learn. So yeah, thank you everyone, and biggest thank you to our presenters. We'll leave you all to enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate you turning up. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Bye.
very much. Thank you.